Can I ask the witnesses, the economic modelling in the Cross-Whitehall briefing estimated that a free trade agreement with the United States of America would provide a benefit to the UK GDP of around 0.2% in the long term. It also says that further trade deals as part of an ambitious FTA agenda, and sometimes I think free trade agreements are actually lesser trade agreements or bits of trade agreements, depending on which area you're looking at. But these FTAs could include deals with economies such as China, India, Australia and New Zealand, and they would add a further 0.1 to 0.4% of GDP. Based on the modelled impact of previous trade deals, are those GDP values in the right order of magnitude, do you think, panel? And I'll start with Professor Blake on the left.
Well, I'd like to ask Professor Minford, who's done the quantitative modelling on this. I'd like to come back on the qualitative aspects. Would you mind if Professor Minford answered?
Professor Minford, indeed, you've been delegated by the committee.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Well, no, I don't think they're the right order of magnitude.
Higher or lower?
Actually, in fact, work that is based on the same model as the cross-civil service is now using, the GTAP model, done by Kuriak and co-authors back in 2015 for Open Europe, actually, using the same model, found that if you assumed a 4% tariff elimination through general free trade agreements across the world, which is what you're talking about, you'd get a gain of 0.8%. But as the barriers that are being eliminated are 20%, according to quite authoritative calculations of the barriers the EU puts on food and manufacturers, you've really got to multiply that by 5. So that gives you a much larger number.
And that number is
4% on the GTAP. On the GTAP, using 20% protection elimination through this general process of FTAs you've talked about, which obviously what happens in an FTA with all these different countries is that they look for entry into your market, so you reduce the barriers on your markets and you get access to their markets. And the main gain to the UK, of course, comes from the getting rid of the barriers to our market, which is what brings down prices and creates competition and gets the gains to GDP. And that, as I say, on the GTAP, the model that Whitehall itself is now using is 4% of GDP.
Which other free trade agreements have delivered that magnitude, that order of gains to the economy of another country?
Well, we don't have any precedents for this. I mean, there's lots of studies of world trade agreements of various sorts, which actually we reviewed in chapter 7 of my book on leaving the EU, and they give a variety of gains. They're all gains, depending on the particular sort of thing you're looking at, whether it's TTIP or TTP or all these different things. They've all been studied. You're often using the GTAP